Hello and welcome everyone to DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to join us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Please send Ray and I and our distinguished guests your questions using hashtag DisrupTV. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host Ray Wong, best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business, co-founder, CEO of Constellation Research, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and ZDNet contributor, but most importantly, one of the best follows on Twitter, especially if you're focused on future of technology at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray, to Disrupt TV.
Hey, thanks a lot. And more importantly, welcome to Val, my co-host. And as you can see, his awesome professorial background, which is cool. He is one of the top CIO and CMO influencers in the world, Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce. But more importantly, someone who gives back in many ways. And we'll get into that one of these days when we do an episode on Val. But before that, we've got more important things to talk about. Who do we have today?
Ray, we've done 62 episodes, and I had the most difficulty consolidating the bio for our next guest because she's just extraordinary. So let me just introduce Liza Donnelly, writer, cartoonist for New Yorker, New York Times, and CBS News. She's an award-winning cartoonist for New Yorker Magazine, where she's been drawing cartoons about culture and politics for a long time. She's also resident cartoonist for CBS News, creating political cartoons, live drawings for CBS This Morning, and special events. She's a published editorial cartoonist, op-ed page of the New York Times. A few years ago, she's a columnist and cartoonist for Forbes, specializing again in politics and more importantly, women's rights. She draws political cartoons for Medium and Politico. She was a finalist for 2014 Thurber Prize, award-winning written humor in the United States. She's a cultural envoy for U.S. State Department, traveling around the world speaking about freedom of speech and women's rights. According to NBC News, she's a pioneer of on-the-fly sketching of live events. If you watch the Academy Awards, if you watch the Emmys, if you watch the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the Tonys, the BET Awards, and if you're following my Twitter during that time, I'm always watching and tweeting Liza's amazing cartoons. And must follow on Twitter for inspiration at LizaDonnelly. Welcome, Liza, to Disrupt.
Whoa, thank you, Vala. Well done. Well, that's quite.
That's about 20% of your bio. You've done so much. We're so happy.
Well, thank you. You're such a great supporter, Vala. You always, ever since I met you, you've just been so behind me and helping me out. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
No. Hey, and more importantly, like the amount of synthesis that you must do is incredible, given the complexity of the topics, sometimes the sensitivity of the issues. That's what makes this really exciting, right? And we live in such a visual world. How do you get into this live drawing, and how does one become a resident cartoonist? I mean, that's a really cool title.
Yeah, I know. I didn't even know there was such a thing, and I think actually I'm the first one for a news show. But it's always been a visual world for me. And so I've just adapted to the world as a visual person from when I was 7 years old to now. And many, many years in print, drawing cartoons, sending them into the New Yorker and having them bought or rejected, many, many rejected. And then the internet happened. And I feel like I took to the internet like a duck to water. I just really loved it because it's just a further extension of what I did as a kid, I would draw when I was in high school. I would draw on a piece of paper and share it with my friend, and they would look at it and laugh or not laugh or talk about it or whatever. That's what I'm doing on social media. So I'm just share, and half the time I don't care if I get. Well, I shouldn't say this. Half the time I don't care if I don't get paid, but because it's a dialogue, it's a sharing with people. The live drawing thing happened about 4 years ago when I got an iPad as a gift, and I started drawing what I saw on TV, like political events, and I immediately, which is what the app does, and people loved it. They ate it up because I think it looks different than anything you see on the Twitter stream.
And you do this in Studio 57 at CBS, right? This is where all the live drawing happens in the green room and all that kind of fun stuff.
Sometimes, I mean, yeah, it's there, but it's also on location. Like they sent me to Washington to be at the White House live drawing there a couple weeks ago. So.
Wow. And the red carpet at the Oscars, and I see you drawing behind the scenes, and it's pretty amazing because you're right. It's funny. Often I think I would love to do, if I had the talent, I would love to do this. I wouldn't even mind if I didn't get paid.
No, I'm really having a blast. And the people tell me what they like about it. I'm giving them a visual diary, like they could watch where I am or feel like they're there through my eyes, you know.
Sure.
That I can show them, like the guy taking out the garbage as well as the celebrity speaking at the podium. So.
I love the mix. I love the mix. I think it's
thank you.
And that perspective you don't get, because you can watch the celebrity on TV live, but behind the scenes, that's an exclusive point of view. And you know, as a teacher, as a cultural ambassador, as a public speaker, an author, and of course an award-winning cartoonist, the voice of freedom of expression, how has all of that changed, given you just talked about mobile technology, you talked about digital and social? How has that enabled you to express yourself in a more agile, in a more with more context, now that you can draw on the go?
It definitely can. I draw my iPhone sometimes just using my finger on this. So it's like if I'm not at my studio, I can respond to the world in an instant with a drawing, and that is really exciting to me. So digitally, for me, it's been a hugely expanding experience. But I think so it's changing how cartoons are received around the world. As we know, they can cause death and destruction, as well as bring people together, because I know a lot of international cartoonists, and they're my friends now, and I love that. But certain kinds of humor do not translate across borders. Some humor does. So it's a complicated thing, but it's a mixed bag of positive and negative in terms of cartoons can do.
Given the political climate and some of the tragedies that we've experienced, especially in the news industry abroad, very emotional process, I would assume, of capturing the sentiment and the heart and soul and the feelings of the moment. Can you talk to us about, as you're drawing, you know, what goes through your mind, where you know you have to be mindful of the different cultural and points of view?
Yeah. Well, it's a longer conversation, Vala.
Yeah.
But two things pop into mind. When I first started drawing, I was always a political cartoonist, but when I started doing more political cartoons on the web for different sites, I initially thought, well, I can't draw about women's rights in other parts of the world because I don't live there. I don't know what it's like to be there. I don't know what it's like to be a woman in Afghanistan because I am not there. I'm a privileged white woman in America. But then I tried to figure out a way to make a connection between women where we have, and what I decided was that I had a responsibility to talk about women's rights globally, because we are connected on some level, all women. So that's one thing. I think that answered your question. And it was a difficult decision to do that. And so I try to push my creativity a little bit more to say things that mean something to me, and to take into consideration everybody else's opinion if possible.
You masterfully use humor to deliver the
Thanks. Yeah.
It's not just humorous. It's sometimes snarky. It's sometimes short and punchy. It's sometimes insightful. It's sometimes you look at it and you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I mean, there's a lot of wit behind this.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's exciting when we see this, right? I mean, we use, at our conference every year, we use graphical recorders, right? And we do that as well, just to capture the moment. But, you know, they tend to be, and we love them, they tend to be more objective. It'd be funny if they were much more pointed and snarky.
You know what? When I first started doing live drawing, it was for the Cartooning for Peace organization that I belong to. It's a French group that do global things. They do a conference every year in Avignon, and they have cartoonists, like 4 of us international cartoonists, come and draw on paper, actually, and they have one of those, what do they call, the projectors that goes over a piece of paper. And so as the attendees, the conference people are talking about serious cultural issues, us cartoonists are off in the corner drawing these humorous cartoons, not just live drawing of what we're seeing, but making light. So they'll be having a serious conversation, all of a sudden the whole room erupts in laughter because they see this cartoon that's being projected. The French love cartoons, of course. So it's a great of the serious and important conversations, but let's try to make make it light every so often. And that's what I try to do with my work.
No,
And my
that's great
public
stuff.
speaking too. So.
No, that's great stuff. And Mark Gore and his
Thanks.
organization over there have done great work in terms of being cartooning for peace. When you're thinking about, this in 2014, you worked on something very cool with another New Yorker cartoonist, which you can tell us more about in a bit. But tell us more about cartoon marriage. There's something interesting behind that, and a little bit how Jennifer Garner played a role in that.
Well, about almost 30 years ago, I got married to another New Yorker cartoonist, Michael Maslin. And we both met through the New Yorker. We were both cartooning at the time. And after a couple of years of being married and having kids, we thought, it might be an interesting book, Cartoon Marriage. So we both of us have had we've drawn a lot of cartoons about marriage, not just our own. Because usually your work is not so specific. It's more general. You try to find things that are specific to you, but also can apply to other people's lives. So that's what we did this book called Cartoon Marriage, and it had cartoons about marriage and had sections about our particular our specific marriage as well. And Jennifer Garner has a production company, and she was married to Ben at the time, Ben Affleck. They really wanted to produce it. So it got very close to being picked up as a television sitcom. And unfortunately, there were a lot of comedies, I'm told there were a lot of comedies being pitched that year, and ours got very close to being picked up as a sitcom, but didn't make the cut. So we were really disappointed, but that's life.
We can follow your husband at Ink Spills News. It's pretty cool to do as well on Twitter.
Thank you. Yeah.
So very much. Okay.
This may be a hard question, maybe asking a parent, about a favorite child, but is there a favorite cartoon that you like, your all-time favorite? And maybe it's your first, I don't know, but can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, your first cartoon in the New Yorker is always really your baby, but it's not really my favorite cartoon. Gosh, Val.
Sorry, I'm asking.
I don't know, because I have a variety of types of cartoons. I've got silly cartoons like. Oh, here's one that might resonate now. It was published in the New Yorker during the Clinton administration. It was one of my political cartoons for them. And there's a man coming into the restaurant. Waiter's coming. He's holding a tray, and on the tray is a man is sitting on the tray, and he says to the people at the table, "Prosecutor." So it was during the Clinton time when he was being being investigated all the time. So that's one of my favorites. But I also do some serious
plenty of
stuff
material
too.
the next 3.5 years. So.
Oh my God.
You're going to be too busy. We don't want you burned out. Yeah. Hey, tell us about your role as an educator, right? I mean, these set of episodes really has been talking about teaching and learning. You do that with your with visuals and cartoons. Tell about being an educator at Vassar before. When you were doing that, you had a really cool class that was super highly rated. I think one of my friends might have taken the class. I won't say who, and indict her, Cartoons in American Culture and Women's Studies. And I was asking her, and she said that was like the most fun she had, because it was a chance to express herself in a way that she never had before. And she was a horrible artist. and she learned how to do that, and it's something that worked with her. So, but what motivates you to share that and share those kind of experiences?
Well, the teaching at Vassar came about because I wrote a book called Funny Ladies, which is about the history of women cartoonists at the New Yorker. And I went and spoke at Vassar, and from there they invited me to teach in the Women's Studies department, which was fantastic. And I was not trained as an educator for college level, but I learned a huge amount. But what's great about teaching with cartoons, this is actually a history of women's studies. This is not a drawing class, this one. Was I used cartoons, not just mine, but others' cartoons, to point out everyday things that the students may not have thought about. Like you could give them an academic article about sexism, right? About something, the patriarchy, and they can get it. They'll read it and understand it. But if you show them visually, show them cartoons because humor softens people a little bit. it lets them relax into the subject, and they'll also maybe recognize something in their own lives that they see and can recognize the problem. So sometimes my cartoons, I like to get at issues in the culture that I think are wrong. And if you draw them, people might see them more easily than if you just try to write about it in an academic piece.
There was one. Yeah, there was one that was fun. That was you wrote something. I think it was something with women in industrial design. Where are my ladies at? So
interesting.
So that was one that was fun. But yeah, but you know, when you're sharing and when you're doing that, I mean, do you help people understand how to bring not just the visualization, the technology, the different points of view that you have together? Like, what inspires folks behind that?
I don't understand your question. Rephrase that.
Well, how do you bring technology and design and, you know, your points of view together as you're teaching folks, right? Because it sounds like every cartoon, every image, every visual is really a lesson, and that you're trying to give people an insight to that they might not have seen before. Like, what's the thought process behind that? How do you get people to get there? Because you do it so succinctly. Like, it's more succinct than Twitter. So,
well, I have to sort of explain that when I've taught, it was not teaching how to cartoon. I find that a difficult thing to do, unless I'm trying to work with elementary school age kids. I know people do it, and I respect them for it, but I have trouble teaching somebody at the adult level or college level to actually draw cartoons. So my teaching at Vassar was not artistic. It was more just
right. I understand that.
Yeah.
So you're helping people understand women's history through cartoons, from what I understand, right? As opposed to teaching people cartoons, but you did it in a way, from what I understood, you did it in a way that was so impactful because of the way you thought through the issues, and you made it very succinct for people to understand complex concepts.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
And how do you do that internally? Because you do it naturally. You do it naturally. How do you walk through that?
Years of practice. Like anything else.
Babe Ruth, how he swung for home runs. They
just did it. They just did it. I mean, it's just one of those things, like, this isn't any like Malcolm Gladwell book. We did it like 20,000 times and became experts. I mean, there's a natural gift here, is what you're saying. So
I don't know. I think it can be learned, but I've just been doing it a long time, and there's no set method particularly, and every cartoonist has their own method. For me, it's an awareness of society and culture, and keep listening all the time. Like, I keep up with the news. I like the news. My cartoons are often based on the news, so I keep track of that, so I don't miss the thread of what's going on. And I make notes. I actually do use paper still, but I make notes on my phone too about words or ideas or trends that are happening in the culture. And sometimes I might use them, sometimes I might not.
But mix and remix so well. Right?
Yeah,
that's part of it. Like, you pull a concept from one area, which might be like something in politics, and you take something for society, and then you mash them up.
That's a great point.
Part of the fun, right? I mean,
that's what I do. Sometimes I use a big piece of paper on my table, and I have like different words, different images, and all of a sudden you go like, oh, right, that mixes together. That works. Or you're not even sure it works. You put it out there.
I think that's what I love about Twitter. It gives me not only access to instant news, but I get different perspective all at the same time. My final question for you: I have some common, mutual friends in Whitney Johnson and Deb Schofield and Kaplan, and these folks all inspire me. Who inspires you? What are they, thought leaders or folks that you work with or friends who inspire you to do what you do?
Well, I'm thinking of a couple people. Since I didn't know you were going to ask me that, but
all my questions are coming from
no, people have asked me that before. And I think of somebody from my past who has inspired me because of her quiet tenacity, and that's Jane Goodall. And she has nothing to do with my field, but she just pushed and pushed. Quietly made inroads into a male field and made changes and made discoveries on her own because she loved what she did. And I find her an inspiration, and she's still working. But other than that, I also I'm inspired by women comedians, many of them. You know, they're envelope, and they're putting themselves out there, and are being very vulnerable by putting themselves out there. Two areas that come to mind right away. But there's so many people that inspire me. I love, like you, Vala, I love Twitter, and I love being in touch with people all over the world, because I'm amazed at what people are doing.
Well, this is awesome. Thank you so much, Liza. We are talking to Liza Donnelly, writer and cartoonist, New York Times, CBS News. You can follow her at LizaDonnelly, and more importantly, someone who's a thought leader, who's definitely a cultural pioneer, and more importantly, someone that's capturing moments in time succinctly. So thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you. Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
I was thinking about this before our conversation, that it's so ironic to me that I'm on a show called DisrupTV, because when I was young, I never thought of myself as a disruptor, but I think I always have been. Yes. It's just a different kind of disruptor. And I'm very proud that you've invited me on and call me a disruptor, because I think we have to all find our own way to disrupt, whatever that is. Yeah.
In a good way. In a good way. Disruption in a good way.
Yes,
You're
exactly.
a disruptor. You're a disruptor in an incredibly positive and inspiring way. And I've learned so much from you, and I thank you for the show.
Well, likewise. Thank you.
Happy Friday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, it is Friday, and we are among educators and disruptors. Who do we have next?
By the way, my ultimate goal is for you, Ray, and for both of us to get drawn by Liza. So we gotta find a way.
I know I should have done it when I was on the CBS Sunday show, Rita Braver, but I think it was before she joined.
To the Emmys, to the Oscars to get that chance. But
to the Oscars of technology.
Talk about a disruptor at the highest level in his institution. We have Scott Pulsipher, president of Western Governors University, the nation's first and largest competency-based university, and Scott's responsible for leading all academic, operational, and organizational functions. Both Ray and I had a privilege of listening to Scott at a higher ed summit in Austin a couple of weeks ago, and incredible thought leader. Scott blends a personal drive for making a difference in lives of individuals and families through education and a passion for technology-powered innovation. At Western Governors University, he's driving continuous innovation to improve student outcomes by focusing on rapidly advancing curriculum quality, new faculty models, data-driven learning, and different cost models. He's a big thinker, and you'll hear that in the next 20 minutes or so. Before coming to Western Governors University, Scott had more than 20 years of leadership experience in technology-based, customer-focused businesses, including Amazon, Sterling Commerce, which is now IBM, and 2 successful startups as well. So again, a mix of entrepreneurial startup to some of the largest, biggest, most successful companies in the world. Another must follow on Twitter. You can follow Scott at ScottPul, SCOTTPUL. Welcome, Scott, to DisrupTV.
Hey, Vala, thanks for having me. Good to see you, Ray.
Hey, good to see you. Welcome on board. Western Governors University, WGU, you guys are the disruptor in higher education. I mean, you basically started, flat fee pricing, competency-based model education. Talk about CBE and why it's so different in the education market, and why is the attraction, especially to adult students?
Yeah, it truly is actually the foundation of how WGU came about. I think we started with simply the principle that, in fact, everyone can learn, and trying to figure out how, on that principle, how do we increase access and improve quality of education. And the fundamental idea was simply that if you keep the standards for learning constant and you let the time vary depending on the individual, that, in fact, it can dramatically change the nature of higher education. I think one of the other core principles about WGU is that, like Amazon, if you will, in e-commerce and retail in general, and so many other places, is that WGU puts the student at the center of everything that we do. And so as we thought about even competency-based education, we thought simply about, if you were to take the entire model of higher education and center it all around the student, how would you do it differently? And that has led to so much of not just the competency-based education design, but how we develop our curriculum, how we design our faculty roles, how do we utilize technology, and everything else. And so that is probably one of the hallmarks of WGU, as well as the competency-based education model.
You know, what I found interesting is we had hundreds of executives leading their institutions, colleges, universities at the summit, and yet I rarely heard them talk as much as you did about business model innovation, not just technology innovation, but business model innovation. Can you talk about some innovations that you see in higher education that's a combination of not only just, you know, advancing technology and use of technology, but also thinking about new business models?
Yeah, I think one of the core points around that student centricity starts simply with the business process of teaching, if you will. I think to some degree, I would argue that there are two fundamental purposes of higher education: to advance knowledge, which there are over 200 research-based universities in the United States. But the other fundamental purpose of higher education is to transfer knowledge. And when we thought about the concept of teaching and the transfer of knowledge from those who have it to those who need it to be successful, we effectively started thinking about, well, not all students learn the same way, not all of them come with the same knowledge, not all of them learn at the same rates. So when you think about teaching, what are all the other facets that you need to bring to bear in the process of teaching? And some of that directly are things like, how does technology like gamification, like micro-terming, like notifications and nudges and things like that, how do those factor into how the adaptation of the teaching itself can be more individualized? Another process model itself is, we just completely looked at the teaching model and said, it's maybe a little too much for one faculty member to do it all. What if we actually had faculty that designed and developed the curriculum? We had separate faculty who were the subject matter experts who taught specific courses, but we also had faculty who do all of the augmented instruction, the guidance, the counseling, the planning, the project management, all these other aspects that in fact are so critical to the cognitive development of a student. And so that was an example of a teaching process where we said, you know what, when you look at the process of transferring knowledge differently, how would you approach it? And I think that same could be applied to how we think about admissions processes, how we think about evaluation and assessment, how we think about proctoring. You know, if you consider the fact that we have 80,000 students who entirely are online, well, none of them are going to a testing center where they're going to sit and watch a proctor walk up and down the aisles. You know, no, they're all doing this online. And so if you were to proctor exams when students are taking their courses wherever they may be, at their home, in a Starbucks building, on a military base somewhere, you're going to think about testing and proctoring differently.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the interesting things, you get some interesting courses online. I mean, you just launched a bachelor's in cybersecurity and information assurance. Yeah. I think this has got to be hot. I mean, everyone's looking to figure out how to safeguard infrastructure and secure data. And you do this all with, you know, not just the way you actually deliver the course training. Talk a little bit how people sign up. I mean, they can be anywhere, right, to be able to get access to not just mentors and courses. So how does it work? What's the underlying stuff behind it?
Yeah, the reality is that we virtualized the entire thing. So not to your point is the admission process itself. If you think about how you discover the programs that are available at WGU, and then you start applying for admission to those programs, all of that is technology enabled. All the, you know, everything as the student starts the journey into their program. That journey is the first of many in which we're trying to discover how this individual particularly learns, how they progress, develop, et cetera. I think the other key thing is you think about the teaching that has to happen now virtually. So you need a multi-mode, multi-device communications model that allows this kind of individualized, regular faculty-student interaction. So you completely change from a professor on stage in an auditorium to, nope, just like this. You and I are going to have a one-on-one interaction, and we're going to bring up, you know, virtual content and talk about the course materials, or we're going to go through scenarios and simulations live, utilizing the internet and one-to-one engagement that we can have. And so that whole underpinning to us is ensuring that these interactions are now enabled by technology, that distance is not a factor in how it occurs. And so what you might not realize is that while we have over 3,000 faculty at WGU, none of those faculty, well, I shouldn't say none, but a very, very, very small percentage of them are co-located anywhere. They're all working from their remote locations, and they're connecting with 80,000 students wherever those students may be. And it's providing a richer, more engaging, more individualized experience in a way that you couldn't do in a residence-based model.
And to really experience that, I mean, if you go online and you just click on one of those areas, I think it was like a better way to learn. I mean, it walks you through it. It says, hey, when do you want to graduate? How much time do you have? Like, hey, what do you know?
Right.
You know, what competencies do you have? You know, how fast do you want to do something? And you help them build the course based on who they are, right? It's like personalized education out of the box.
It's exactly. The course plan is definitely going to be reflective of how you learn individually, what knowledge you bring to the table. And to your point is one of the notions of, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense actually to have then credit hour based pricing. You're like, shouldn't we actually provide a more of a subscription based model where there's just a flat tuition per 6-month term and you can learn as much as you can in that 6-month period. And that's where, you know what, as soon as I start seeing my course plan and the materials and where I am already able to leverage existing knowledge I have from work or otherwise, I can progress pretty quickly through certain courses and I can give my time and attention to other courses. I often joke about the fact when I showed up to my physical science class my freshman year in college, and the professor said basically that your grade is going to be an average of your 3 best midterms or just your final. And I raised my hand and said, you know, somewhat snarkingly, if you will, that said, so I don't have to come to class? He's like, and he just repeated that your grade will be this. And so I never went to class. I'm like, well, I can learn this on my own. And I went and took the final and I was great, you know. And so that was like, I didn't know it then. But
the final the first day?
That's what I should have asked. I'm like, can you just give me that test now and I'll see how I do. But that was my first experience, if you will, with competency-based education, that I was already, you know, progressed in my competency and the mastery of those competencies that were necessary for that course. And that is the model where you let the time vary, but you keep the standard for learning constant. And the student is in control of, you know, how quickly they can progress. It is paced, meaning that they work closely with their faculty to make sure they're progressing as they need to. But if you can accelerate through some, you do so. If you need more time and attention on others, you get it. So,
sure. You know, I envision you like Billy Bean in Moneyball. I don't know why, but I think a guy who comes from a technology background, and not just technology, from Amazon, where they're filing patents for, you know, warehouses in the air and drones landing on streetlights, and you know, some of them have 60,000 active robots in their warehouses. So a super tech savvy president who's going to come in here and just break things and challenge the conventional, this is the way we've been doing it, statements left and right. What attracted you to WGU? And is that vision correct, that you're essentially a scene in Moneyball challenging traditional thinking?
Yeah, I do love baseball. I will say that. That is one thing I love, is I do love baseball. But I think there is, at the core of what we do is truly our purpose is to change the lives of individuals and families. And I still know and absolutely believe that there's no single more impactful catalyst in helping individuals change their lives than education. And it is proven time and time and again that, in fact, the more information and knowledge, et cetera, you possess, the more confidence you have about your potential for opportunity, about your impact in the world, about the opportunities that are available to you. And what we also know, for example, we say individuals and families because when the children of a parent who is also a college graduate, they are 10 times more likely to go to college and also attain their degrees. And so we know that this education is changing the lives of our graduates, and that purpose. It's hard for me to say that I, even with all the startups I've done, and Amazon, as amazing that it is, when I can come to work every day and know that what we do is absolutely changing the lives of these individuals that are at WGU. That's what drew me to it. Awesome. Now, having said that, as you highlighted in the kind of short intro, passion for technology. And when I started thinking about how it's already disrupting higher education, and I started thinking more broadly about the higher education space in general, I can't think of a sector that has been more, founded in these roots that were put in centuries and centuries ago in the U.S. You go and walk Harvard's campus. I am a Harvard graduate. And you walk the campus and you see the founding, 1640 or whatever you're like.
You rub John Harvard's foot.
Yeah, you rub John Harvard's foot. It's nice and polished off, and you realize like the model we have for higher education, this notion of the ivory tower, you're like, hey, we have all the knowledge, and so everyone should flow into the ivory tower and we can part unto your knowledge. You're like, that's not a technology-enabled model. And so I think even Clayton Christensen noted at the summit that we were at, they said, behind all good innovations is technology. That's an absolute. It doesn't mean technology by itself is an innovation, but innovation and disruption doesn't really happen without technology. And I think that's what I recognize with WGU, this opportunity to leverage technology and all the software and development that we can do to drive a different way of doing things. But to your vision of Moneyball, what you do get when you enable the entire end-to-end student journey with technology, what do you get? You get a lot of information and data about what's actually driving outcomes for students.
Yeah.
And when you have that data, guess what? You make much better decisions about how you design curriculum, how you modify processes, how you change faculty models to adapt to different student types, how you utilize microterms and gamification, a variety of other things. The reality is that it dramatically increases the quality of the education that the student's going to experience. And that is something that we do at a scale that no other university can right now, because I often like to highlight, not only do we have 80,000 plus students, we're enrolling 4,000 plus every month.
Wow.
And so we have a huge opportunity to just test all these theories of learning and actually realize which ones are driving outcomes.
It's getting the students on base. That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's right. Yeah, singles and doubles, baby. That's how you get the runs. Yeah.
That's 4,000 a month. Wow.
4,000 a month is not kidding. I mean, this is you're doing like massive training here. I mean, this is like folks, and you're giving folks an opportunity to reskill. I mean, if you think about what's happening in the job market or what's happening in training, I mean, lots of people have a lot of skill sets, but they were never valued. Right. So the competency-based model actually takes into account and helps folks, especially as they're transitioning careers, looking into different opportunities, is pretty cool. Now, that's the heart of this new business model. I mean, where do you see this role of lifelong education playing out?
Yeah, I think what you just hinted at is what we do know is this, that certain skills and competencies, they only have a certain shelf life. I often think about what's the shelf life of knowing how to code in a certain programming language. We're like, well, today it may be 3 to 5 years. Well, that's true also in certain other skill sets that exist in any number of different sectors. What we do know is continuous learning is vitally important to our success long term. And so having a much more accessible, affordable, technology-enabled model by which we can continuously access the skills that we want to advance our capabilities in, our competencies in. That is something that our model and competency-based, technology-enabled, online, distance-based, that is going to make this continuous learning so much more accessible than it was previously. The other thing I would highlight is that we absolutely believe in infusing general education to everything that we have. When I say general education, what am I really talking about? The most transferable skills that we all are looking for in our employees and the people we work with. It's critical reasoning capabilities, it's written and oral communication, it's influencer and leadership skill sets. Those things are highly, highly transferable. So we also believe infusing that general education into our programs is going to be vital for enabling lifelong learning. But getting back to the core point is when you think about to some degree, if you took, rather than a degree, you're going to have some kind of micro-credential. Well, how quickly can I access the learning that's necessary to achieve that micro-credential? And you want to be able to do that in a distance-based, not campus-based. You want to do that with a relatively cost-effective and affordable way. You want to ensure that that credential is highly credible and respected and regarded. So I think this is changing the nature by which individuals can access the ongoing learning for them to advance in whatever career track they pursue.
That is awesome. That is really cool. So we're seeing this shift. I mean, not just in terms of how people learn, but you see the way that people are trying to transform. Are corporations like pitching in and helping you with like tuition or with scholarships? Because I see a lot of different announcements from all different places, but are people just saying, hey, this is the future of our, corporate program. I need a, master's in IT or master's in, or teaching, college of teaching. How do I join that? What do people have to do?
Yeah, there's a variety of different ways in which they can participate, I would say, is that I think the employers and they're getting involved simply even in the design of the programs and curriculum. Why? Because they know that even the graduates coming out, they aren't fully ready in all the skills that they want in their employees that they're hiring. And so in our case, we have very active advisory councils and participants from employers from the different sectors. They're directly influencing the competencies that are designed as the learning objectives into our programs. But more importantly, they need to make sure that all the employees that they have are very aware of these options that are available to them to get access to the degrees and credentials that they want to pursue in the first place. And so that itself, in terms of partnering, we have hundreds of partnerships directly with employers and with community colleges and others that said, listen, they need to know that there are paths and options that don't require them to go to a very rigid, inflexible model that doesn't meet their needs. And you see that in the growth of just online and distance ed. Like it's growing 11+% a year in terms of total number of adults and individuals going into online distance programs. I think it's over now 6 million of the 20 million students in the system are doing it through online models. And I think the employers are recognizing that they can be a very effective way by which their employees are continuing to be trained and learn and advance in ways that they didn't before. So I think the employers themselves have to be a part of bringing more and more adults into the higher education system, because that's how you get what's the number overall? 65% of the future jobs are going to require adults with this post-secondary credentials. Well, to do that, the employers need to make sure that these options are accessible to them, they're affordable, they're contributing to the tuition reimbursement programs, they're contributing to the actual curriculum themselves. Itself. So I think there's a variety of ways in which employers are kind of waking up to the future of education.
Terrific insights. Thank you so much, Scott, for being our guest. Hopefully you consider coming back. Tremendous insight. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and you can follow Scott. We're talking to President of Western Governors University, our friend Scott Pulsipher, SCOTTPUL. Follow on Twitter for some interesting higher ed insights. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. We've got higher ed and educators all over the board, and we've got someone very special coming from a very special place. Who is that?
We are delighted to have, in my humble opinion, one of the top, most innovative CIOs, not just in higher ed, one of the most innovative CIOs, period. Michael Mathews, CIO of Oral Roberts, joining us. Michael has over 24 years of experience, although you can't tell, he looks like he's 35. And senior level IT executive, bringing creative solutions, really creative solutions that add value to end users of technology and business process management. He's a combination of our first two guests, a masterful storyteller and a technologist who's passionate about education. Mike has held positions as Chief Information Officer, General Manager, Chief Strategist for Innovation, Business Development Officer. He's a teacher. He's a Vice President of Academic Services. In the past few years, he has had major national initiatives that have earned 2 invitations to the White House. There's an upcoming invitation as well, where he's going to talk about emerging technology. He's a speaker at the National Education Conference, National Summit for U.S. Academic Policy, and again, a thought leader that folks seek out all the way from the White House to global initiatives. You can follow him, Michael, on Twitter at Innovate4EDU, INNOVATE, the number 4, and then capital EDU. Welcome, Michael, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thank you, Vala. Thank you, Ray. What a privilege to be with you today.
Yes, and please share with us, where are you today?
Actually, good question. I'm in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, which is home to the supercomputer through Seymour Cray. And it's a delight to be here. So hopefully my video turns out the best, because we have supercomputer access and good bandwidth.
He's got the best bandwidth, right? So, for those who don't know, Cray Research is the ones who built some of the most awesome supercomputers in the history of technology. So, hey, when you were appointed as CIO, not so long ago, you received a broad mandate, right, to globalize education across the board through technology. How does that work? I mean, you've got some cool things along the way. We'll talk about those, but really, that mandate, you're transforming education at a very, very innovative university.
Great question, Ray. And it really comes back to 6 simple things. Number 1, vision. In the metaphysical realm of life, vision does matter. But a singular vision helps all the more. So our president, Dr. William Wilson, has just been phenomenal casting a vision of globalization. And in fact, 3 years ago, that's why I came to Oral Roberts University, was that single mandate. The vision, the Board of Trustees supported it, they funded it. So the vision is number one. Number two is passion. Hey, we can have a passion for education, but do we have a passion for people? When there's 7 billion people in the world and I only have 100,000 coming to me every month, big deal. 7 billion people that can be reached with digital electrons that travel at the speed of light around the world. And when you have that vision matched with passion, the next thing can happen, which is I call the Digital Transformation Index that we came up with. Over a 3-year period, how are we more digital than we were the year before and the year before? And in fact, it was you, Ray, who challenged me to say, how many Fortune 500 companies have shut down because they never understood digitalization? And so we have 26 measures that we use to tie passion to vision, but prove that we are truly transforming the digital era for education and technology. And then the fourth thing is simplification. If I can simplify things, I can multiply things. So for instance, I can take this digital card that you're seeing here, hold it behind my smartphone, and you'll see an ear come to life. Okay? That same ear is no longer a learning object, it's a learning environment. But what if I allowed students now to print it on a 3D printer? Around the world, though, not just because they're on Montana.
He just pulled a Marco Tempest on us. Holy crap.
There you go.
It went from physical to digital to metaphysical all at once.
So
that's
when you can turn the,
That's freaking awesome.
yeah, there you go. Hey, who needs books behind them when it's all, you know, in the vision and the passion and the plan, right? There you go. But the fourth thing really is, or fifth thing is vendors. We needed to find vendors who could align with the global vision. Hey, no one's an island. We have a great president. We have a great provost. We have a great CFO, a great chief operating officer, pretty good CIO, but we need vendors to help us. And so we picked world-leading vendors to make sure we could reach the globe. And then the last thing is, who's willing to do the things nobody else wants to do? You know, it's one of the successes in life. I just picked up from somebody not that long ago was, you know, you can be successful if you'll do the things other people won't do. And they're generally the unfavorable things. They're not, they don't have lipstick on them. They don't have gloss on them. They're just the difficult things. And so through those 6 things, that mandate has already been accomplished through our Global Learning Center. And what a privilege to reach the world in such a new fashion and way. That's
terrific. So, Michael, as a CIO, what is required today to be successful in higher ed? We heard from Scott Pulsipher. We heard from an award-winning cartoonist that so there's an element of storytelling and inspiring and educating, breaking things, being disruptive, thinking outside the box. And by the way, I just described you. But can you kind of explain, you know, how do you leverage talent and culture and process and perhaps lastly technology to really move the needle forward?
You know, I think it's having an ear to hear where energy's at and where it's not. Meaning, where's negative energy taking away from the lifeblood of a vision? And, you know, Admiral John Ryan, who was actually the chancellor of the New York university system, said to me one day, not knowing me, even said, hey, Mike, did you realize you can do the impossible if you understand timing? And so I believe timing is everything. We live in the right space and time in the history of the world. And if we put energy behind that, it's amazing what happens. So as a CIO, I choose not to let negative energy affect me, whether it's through the voice of faculty some days, or maybe it's the voice of even administration, or it's a voice of myself. How do I take that and remove it and allow the impossible to start forming itself? Now, the old saying that I've inherited was, I don't believe in miracles, I rely on them. It's so true. When you want to see things happen in this world, in a global world, you better hope for some things, pray for some things, believe God for some things, and I believe the rest is history.
That's terrific.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, there's a lot of things that are required to get innovation in place, right? How do you inspire folks, right, among students and faculty and the community to get to actually drive some of this innovation? Because you've got a lot of smart people around you and in the community.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's back to energy. Do you draw people who want to be innovative? Do you draw people who want to add to your innovation, and it starts multiplying exponentially? And I think when I meet with students, I may be older than they are, but they've been waiting for me. I always look for the people who almost think this, hey, I've been waiting for the day you showed up. And the day I show up is the day they show up. And one thing begats another thing and another thing and another thing. So innovation, the first 16 months, out of a 3-year period wasn't smooth necessarily, but it's like a sculptor, you know, whittling away, chiseling away at things until finally we have something that resembles success. And so as Vala mentioned, it doesn't hurt to be invited to the White House a few times. It doesn't hurt to win a couple national awards. And when you can bring credibility to the table of innovation, you get people nodding their heads. And we have the best faculty in the world at Oral Roberts University, bar none. I've been at a lot of campus through my days, and Oral Roberts University has the most supportive faculty. I don't work against them. They don't work against me. We all have the same common vision. Let's help students around the world, not just the students on our campus.
Speaking of recognition and being a pioneer and a leader, you're certainly driving augmented reality and virtual reality.
Yep.
And you've been identified as one of the top pioneers in that space in the realm of bringing these technologies to really accelerate the learning process. Tell us a little bit about your work.
Yeah, the work really is when you see something that other people can't see, and then you can start manifesting it, it's an incredible day. So I give everybody the example why augmented and virtual reality will change things where gamification cannot. Okay, so gamification has been around for a long time, but it's never helped education, but gambling casinos are making a fortune off it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's simply this: faculty are not going to change what they believe to be their skill set, which is delivering content. Gamification forces a change or model change to curriculum delivery and development. Augmented reality and virtual reality is a backdrop to that which they're already good at. Allowing students to go to their dorm room or around the world, hold up a card or email like this and bringing 10,000 learning environments to life does not affect faculty. Augmented and virtual reality is the #1 thing I've seen in my entire career that literally will transform education.
Wow.
That is really, really cool. Now, hey, one of these things that you talk about and is about reaching the world by flipping the university. What does that mean?
You know, Oral Roberts University has had a slogan for 50 years by Chancellor Oral Roberts himself, said, "Make no little plans here." So students who come on campus, and I brought my daughter to Oral Roberts University in the year 2008 before I knew I would ever work there, and that caught my attention. Make no little plans. So everything we think of, we can flip a classroom, go to your dorm room, watch a video, go to your dorm room, read something, and come back and we'll collaborate, but that's not big enough. What's a bigger plan is to say, how do we learn from the lessons that others failed at, such as no universities are making money overseas by putting bricks and mortar campuses in. They're losing money, and you see them, they're shutting down weekly. And so what if we could actually take knowledge and distribute it around the world and let people study around the world, but not pass a 4-year degree around the world, pass some knowledge, pass some intelligence, pass some wisdom through augmented virtual reality, through teleportation, through the robots that Vala mentioned earlier. Suddenly, you have flipped your whole university and you can reach the world from one campus. One classroom can reach an entire set of dorms across the campus, but one building called the Global Learning Center that is now complete at Oral Roberts University has allowed us to flip the concept of education. And in fact, Vala mentioned, I believe, I was invited to United Nations to speak on behalf of the concept of nano-sizing education. What if we can constructively deconstruct that which is bucketed as a 4-year degree and start disseminating that intelligence so it adds up to a degree? And you'll see shortly, blockchain will play a part in that, where you put value to people's life instead of education to people's life. That will be a game changer for everyone. And so when we can have a vision that thinks about people, a passion for people, all of a sudden the other stuff starts aligning with it. And we're not as concerned with numbers or money. And we've been fortunate. Oral Roberts University is debt-free. We have great donors who believe in what we're doing. We're connected to industry like never before. We just came home with the 2017 Distance Learning Association Innovation of the Year Award. It's a good time. But again, it's back to what Admiral John Ryan told me. You can do the impossible if you understand the time you live.
That is fantastic advice. My final question to you, Michael, advice to CIOs who have the vision, who have the passion. What else do they need to achieve some of the success that you've had?
They need to be a risk taker. I will tell you, in 3 years, I've risked my career at ORU probably 5 times over.
Wow.
But it's not because anybody's a bad person. It's because you're willing to say, I believe in something. Sure. I believe in what you said you wanted to do, and I'm here to help deliver. So if you're not a risk taker in a changing world that we live in, good luck. You can be clever, you can be smart, but you need to be a risk taker, number one. Number two, align with your president, align with your executives, because they want to win too. Everyone loves to be aligned to winning. And if you can be a winner, you've got it made.
Terrific advice.
That was awesome. I was looking at, when we were doing this interview, I was trying to find the picture of me, and believe it or not, I actually lived in Tulsa as a kid, of me, my family, like me, my mom and dad, me being like 1 year old in the cowboy boots and the prayer tower in the back. I actually have this picture somewhere, and I know because I'm like, I remember distinctly. So it's one of those cool things.
Right. You know, ironically enough, Tulsa, the name means the gathering place, the official name, you know, hundreds of years ago. And so people from around the world are connected physically, but now digitally. And it's amazing how many people like Ray we bump into. Hey, I remember that prayer tower. I was in Tulsa. It was a crossroads in my life, or my father's or mother's life at some point. So that's good to hear, Ray.
No, it's pretty wild. And thanks for being here. So, hey, we are on with one of the top innovators in terms of not just education, but also CIOs, Mike Mathews at Oral Roberts University. You can follow him at Innovate for Edu, EDU. Oral Roberts, 76 undergraduate majors, 12 graduate programs, 2 doctoral programs, and more importantly, a very innovative CIO at the helm. So thank you very much for being on the show.
All right. Thank you, Vala. Thank you, Ray. Pleasure to be with you, Scott, as well, and Liz.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ray, what an amazing way to spend your Friday afternoon. I mean, talk about 3 extraordinary thought leaders. And I'll tell you, it's my favorite hour in the week. And I thank everyone who's watching today's show. Next week, we have Braden Kelly, Innovation, Change, and Digital Marketing Strategy at Business Strategy Innovation. We have Jeff Gothelf, author of Sense and Response, How Successful Organizations Listen to Customers and Create New Products. And then finally, one of my favorite guests, Heather Clancy, editorial director at Green Biz Group, who's going to be joining us. So please come and see us again next Friday.
Yeah, this is going to be great. Episode 63. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Thanks for joining us. So see you, everybody.
Bye-bye.